I am a lazy artist. I work fast, I cut corners, I have precious little interest for the purest, more traditional approach to animation. That makes most frame-by-frame tools like Procreate or Toon Boom or Moho a bit painful. They're built to reward patience, determination, and technical know-how, which is super lame. So if you like the feel and the look of hand-drawn animation, but you want a faster, smarter workflow, this video is for you. Today we're diving into Grease Pencil, and why it just might be the best frame-by-frame tool for the artist who wants the results, but not the carpal tunnel surgery. This video is sponsored by Skillshare, but we'll get into that later on. Grease Pencil is one of Blender's shiniest gems. It's got amazing integration with 3D workflows, but still really holds its own as a purely 2D animation suite. I've had quite a few people reach out and ask if I would make a tutorial just kind of easing people into the tools. Grease Pencil is a 2D animation tool and it really works like one, but the UI and the workflows do still feel very 3D software coded, so it can get a little overwhelming. So let's hold hands and I'll walk you through everything you need to know to make one of these blobby little characters. Before we get into it though, make sure you're subscribed to the channel, and if you by chance find yourself learning something, be sure to hit that like button. It'll just help out the channel a little bit. Alright, let's pop Blender and take a crack at making some 2D animation. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is actually kind of dial in our Blender workspace so that it's just kind of optimized for a 2D workflow. Now, by default, I have a little bit of a different default file here, so there are a few things that I'm going to need to change that I assume that you probably will be too, but if you're opening just a factory default Blender file, it might not look the same. So the first thing I'm going to do is just delete all my scene collections. You can do that as well. If you're using the Blender default, you might have a cube and a camera and a light. Just go ahead and delete those. We don't need them. Now, the next thing we're going to do is actually go up to our render panel right here, and we're going to change the render engine from Cycles to Eevee. Yours might be Eevee by default, but I'm going to change mine to Eevee because I started out in Cycles. The next thing, and really the only other thing we need to do to change in the render properties panel right here, is just changing the color management. Now mine is up here by default, but I think that yours will probably be somewhere down here. So if you can't find color management, look towards the bottom. But I'm going to open this and I'm going to change the view transform from AGX, which yours should be AGX by default, to standard. Now AGX is a great color profile, a great view transform for the 3D space. It's a nice contrasty look. You have some really nice depth and color and a nice color range, but we just want really predictable colors to come out of our viewport. So we're going to make this transform standard, and that will just have a really predictable output. So now we can move on to the output properties down here. It'll be this little printer, and we're going to change the resolution from a 16:9 output to a 9:16 output. So we're just going to flip these two. So right now it's 1920 by 1080. We're going to make this 1080 by 1920. That way we have a nice Instagram ready render as soon as we hit go. So right below that, we're also going to change the frame rate from 24 to 12. And this is just going to allow us to work in a 12 frames per second workspace, which is really helpful when we're doing more frame by frame or hand-drawn animation. It gives it that kind of nice handcrafted jittery look, and is also just not an overwhelming number of frames to have to go through. So we're going to keep this at 12 FPS, and as far as the frame range goes, I'm just going to set mine to like 60. We're not really sure how long our animation is going to be yet, but 60 feels a lot more friendly than the, I think, 250 that it starts with. So I'm just going to zoom in here and just kind of square up on my timeline, and I think we're good here. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do here is actually add in a camera. So I'm going to hit Shift A, and I'll go to camera right here, and that will just drop the camera in oriented to wherever, you know, the viewport is looking. So we can hit Alt R to reset that rotation, and then we're just going to rotate it in the X until it's just kind of flush, and then we'll just kind of pull it up to about right here. This is about where we're going to want our camera. We can add in a cube just as a point of interest if we need to kind of orient it. And let's go ahead and drag out another window here, and we will use this window as just kind of our render viewer. So I can hold down the tilde key and go to camera, or I can click this little camera icon and it will just snap in there. Now, hopefully by default, this will be off. It'll have the little unlocked icon, which is great because now we can move this around without breaking our camera or moving our camera. And if you wanted to move your camera, you would just toggle this on and then you can move it like that. So obviously we don't want that. Now you can kind of notice if I zoom in here, by default with our camera, we're able to see the top of our cube here. And that's because this is a perspective camera and it has a perspective lens on it. So we're just going to swap that out for an orthographic lens. So we can go down to our data properties panel down here, this little green camera icon, and under the lens drop down, which is at the very top, we're going to change the type from perspective to orthographic. and that will just kind of compress it and make it a flat image. And it doesn't matter, you know, how close up to the cube I get. You won't be able to see the top or the sides because it's looking at it as though it's a literal flat pancake image, which is perfect for something like what we're doing, which is going to be essentially a graphic representation of a 3D object. So you might also notice as we move the camera back and forth, it actually doesn't change the perspective of where the cube is. In fact, it doesn't even make the cube look like it's moving, or the camera is moving in relation to the cube, until you kind of clip through it. And that's because, once again, this is an orthographic camera, so the way to change the essentially the scale is to change the orthographic scale. So we can increase this to make the cube appear smaller, and we can decrease it to make the cube appear larger. So we're going to do something right around maybe, I don't know, 8. Let's do 8. And we can just go ahead and delete our cube here. Now, the last thing we're going to do in kind of this housekeeping section of the video is go down to our world properties panel right here. It'll be this little red globe, and we're going to choose a color for our background. And I'm just going to set it to pure white, and we can go into render view to make sure that's what that is. And there we go. We have a white background. All right, now the way we're going to approach creating this character is we're going to start with some geometry. We're going to make the body, which is just going to be kind of a circle. We're going to make the umbrella out of geometry, and it's just going to be a flat plane that we kind of slice up. And then we're going to make the boots as well. So all of these pieces are going to serve as essentially in Illustrator or After Effects what would essentially be shape layers. But because they're 3D objects and we can move them into 3D space, to a 3D animator, it feels a little bit more attainable and has a lot more custom ability, and you can do a lot with it. So that's the general workflows. We're going to start with creating these kind of shapes, you know, these shape layers. Then we're going to go through and we're actually going to use a few different kinds of grease pencils. We're going to use grease pencils that target specific objects, so it turns geometry into an outline essentially. And then we're going to hand draw some details onto the top of it. And then finally, for our last part inside Blender, we're going to actually go through and we're going to hand draw some of the animation. We're going to make him blink, and I think we're also going to make some raindrops patter down on his umbrella. So just really simple stuff. We're not really getting into, you know, super crazy VFX or character animation. It's just going to be a really simple, almost kind of cinematographic type render. It's nothing crazy or that overwhelming, but that's by design. I want it to feel very approachable, very understandable. And yeah, okay, all that said, let's go ahead and get into it. Now, this is going to be probably the easiest part of the entire video. We're going to hit Shift A, and under Mesh, we're going to look up Circle and tab into Edit Mode, hit F, and there we have it. We have the main body of our character. If we rotate it 90 degrees, there he is. In all of his glory, there's our character. And I'm going to go ahead and actually add a material onto him just so we can kind of see what we're working with here. So I'm going to go down to my material property panel right here. I'll just click new, and I'm going to rename this to red because I want my little blob character to be red. And I'm just going to click this little green part right here. And we don't want a principal BSDF. Instead, what we can use is a Toon BSDF. Now, this is really, you know, this is just a quick and dirty example. Toon works fine. You can use really anything, just whatever we have that isn't going to be impacted by light and will look kind of cartoonish or like flat shaded will work. So Toon will get the job done for this. Now I'm going to also turn off my overlay up here so that I can just have a nice clean render view, and I'm going to hit T to close that. I'm going to go ahead and turn off the gizmos and everything here just so I have a pure dedicated workspace here that is only for viewing things, okay? Now, as you can see, if we zoom in a little bit, there's some faceting on our circle. And that's just because there's not enough geometry to make it appear smooth. It just kind of has, I think it was like 32 vertices along that. So we get these facets on the circle. But because we're trying to kind of ape the style of a vector graphics, having these facets is not ideal. So let's go ahead and go to modifiers, and we can add in a subdivision surface modifier. And if you have Sweet Buttons Pro, you could just click the build stack. If you don't have Sweet Buttons Pro, you can find it linked below. It'll just save you a few minutes as you're going through this. So I'm going to crank up the viewport levels to 2, and we'll just zoom in here to make sure. And sure enough, I think that got rid of all of our facets. So as we go, just pay close attention. If we get something that kind of has those facets along it, we'll be wanting to subdivide that so we don't get those. It kind of breaks the illusion of the flat 2D, almost hand-drawn look. So the next thing we need to do is actually create an umbrella. So I'm going to add in another circle. I will go down here to the little pop-up menu. I'll toggle it open, and I'm going to change the vertices from 32 to 12. Okay. Now I can rotate it 90 degrees in the X, and then I'm going to drag it up here a little bit. I'll tab into edit mode, grab all my vertices, and just kind of scale them in the X. I feel like umbrellas are a little bit stretched out in the X axis than maybe just a pure circle. So I'll go like that and then delete these bottom faces. So now I can just grab both of these bottom vertices. I'll hit F to bridge them, and then I'm going to hit Command R and just cut 3 edge loops in there so that I have enough geometry to essentially close this gap without an ingon. Because if we closed it with an ingon, it would be very hard to kind of add more geometry, which we're going to need to do in order to kind of get those nice I don't know what they are, arcs on the bottom of the umbrella, whatever. Let's go ahead and select all of our objects with A. We'll go up to face and we'll do grid fill. And that will just do exactly what it sounds like it's going to do. It will fill the grid. Same kind of thing, we're going to add in a subdivision surface modifier right here. We'll crank that to 2. And now I'm just going to drag these up a little bit so we start to kind of just work on our umbrella shape. And I'm going to hit Command R and just add in another edge loop down here. I'll hit E so that it kind of snaps to the bottom. But I actually want to bevel the peaks and valleys so that they're a little bit sharper. So I'm going to grab with 2, so I go into edge mode. I'm going to grab this edge, and this edge. And I'll hit Command B and just kind of drag this out to like here maybe. I can look over on my right side, on the right side of the screen, to just kind of see a little bit better what's going on. And maybe that's good. I might use the middle mouse wheel to just scroll that up. And I think that's good. I'm going to set that down right there. And then I'm going to turn on my X symmetry up here in the top right. I'll grab just one of these. And then I'm just going to kind of scale it out a little bit so that the umbrella part where the kind of valley is, or the peak, depending on how you're looking at it, is just a little bit softer. Something like that, I think. And maybe I'll scale this down. So there's still not enough geometry here. I still see these facets. So I'm just going to grab both of these and crank it to 3. And hopefully that's enough. I think that'll work. That'll work for what we need. So the next thing that we're going to do here is actually add in a piece of geometry for the handle of the umbrella. Now we're going to use a grease pencil to actually outline the handle of the umbrella, but we still need to have geometry for it to grab onto. So let's go ahead and hit Shift A and let's just add in a plane. Once we add that in, we can't really see it unless we snap out of orthographic. I can just hit Tab to go into edit mode. I'll hit A to make sure I have all my vertices selected, and then M, and I'll merge everything at the center. So now I just have one single vertice here, and I'm going to pull it all the way up to essentially where I want the tip of the point of the umbrella to be. I guess the spiky part that pops out of the top. You know what I'm talking about. And then I'll hit E to extrude down. I'll make sure that's constrained in the Z value. And I'll pull it down to somewhere about here. I'll E to extrude over to the left, and then E to extrude up again. And I'm just going to grab these bottom vertices, hit Command B, and then V to be able to actually bevel the vertices. And then I can just use my scroll wheel to kind of turn that up. So I'm just looking to bevel this to about the point where these 2 bottom vertices are going to overlap. So now I'll just grab these. I'll hit M and merge them at center. And now I have kind of this crooked handle for my umbrella, which is awesome. I can already tell this is not going to be enough geometry to not look, yeah, you can see there it looks faceted. If you don't know what I mean by that, or you can't see it on your screen, it's just this look where you have these straight lines that are all kind of just strung together to create the illusion of a curve, when in all reality it's very obvious that it's not. So we're just going to go ahead and add in a subdivision surface modifier. We'll crank it to 2. And now we're getting some weird deforming right there. If I were to add the geometry, or the grease pencil rather, it would be a little bit more obvious, but I know what I'm looking at. Okay, yep, I tab into edit mode. Look, right there. That's what I'm talking about. See, I'm not crazy. We're getting some weird deformation there. So what I'm going to do is hit Command R and just add in another little edge loop here. And I'm just going to bring it down, and I'm going to use it to kind of back up and shore up this line right here. So now I tab back into edit mode, and it looks great. Okay. So now we have our umbrella handle and our umbrella itself. I'll just move the umbrella in front of the umbrella handle just a little bit, and then I'll move this whole thing to here. And you know, while I have it like this, let's make sure we have the umbrella selected first and the umbrella handle selected second. And we'll do Command P and then parent the umbrella top to the handle. So now if I grab the handle, the origin is kind of screwed up, but that's we're able to move that around. So obviously it doesn't show up in the render quite yet, but we will come back to that and fix that momentarily. So let's go ahead and actually change the pivot point of our little umbrella here. There are some pieces of geometry to grab onto, but I want the pivot point to be about here. So I'm going to hold down Shift and then right click, and that will just send the cursor to right there. And then I can right click this and set origin to 3D cursor. And now the origin of our umbrella is right here. So we can kind of move that around. It's going to be a little bit harder to orient because we obviously can't see the umbrella handle in our render here, but we can just kind of put it essentially where we think it should be, and that's going to be about right there. All right, our assets are made up, and I think we're in pretty good shape to start animating. But first, I'm going to yap at you a little bit about today's sponsor, Skillshare. Skillshare, as I'm sure you all know, is a massive online platform with a robust catalog of classes. They have a huge number of topics that range into just about any category you could think to learn. I am, of course, a 3D artist, so the first thing that I stuck my nose into was Blender and other 3D animation resources. And as expected, there is a giant stockpile of helpful classes to master any number of skills. Now, any 3D package, Blender included, is unbearably massive and has too many tools to comfortably learn on your own. And YouTube is great, there's plenty of free resources, just like the video that you're watching, but sometimes you just need more structured content taught in a linear progression. And I think that's really where Skillshare fits in. Now, personally, I have a lot of days where I just feel like laying in bed all day and doing nothing despite really needing to work on projects. I wanted to learn an iPad app for sculpting so that I didn't need to traverse the grueling 30 feet to my computer every day. And luckily for me, I had Skillshare. I hopped on Skillshare and I found an amazing class by the very talented David Reed, Introduction to 3D with Nomad Sculpt. Phenomenal teacher and artist, by the way. Once you do get Skillshare, be sure you check out his catalog. So instead of stringing together 15 videos with about 12 minutes of content between them, I went straight to Skillshare for a singular platform with a structured class layout. I learned Nomad Sculpt in no time at all, letting me sculpt my ideas wherever I am. And it's not just 3D stuff either. Skillshare has a huge assortment of classes and instructors that can help you level up on any number of topics. Now that I wield Skillshare, I may abandon Blender altogether. Maybe I'll take up knitting, or woodworking, or baking. Who knows, I'm unpredictable. So instead of paying full price out of the gate, I've got a promo for you. The first 500 people to use the link in the description or scan the QR code on my screen here will get a 1-month free trial of Skillshare. So click that link and get started today. Okay, so now we're going to get into the actual grease pencil part of this. This is kind of the fun part. I really like the animation part. That's what I'm really stoked for. But this is a pretty good start, just kind of getting into the grease pencil. So there are essentially different kinds of grease pencil objects, and we're going to add in a collection that we'll just call grease pencil. Right here, and that way, as we add grease pencils in, let's be really organized, rename all the different grease pencil objects so we can kind of keep track, and we can keep all of them just kind of shoved into this single little box here, okay? So we're gonna hit Shift A, and we're gonna go down to the bottom of the first section here, and you can find there are a bunch of different grease pencil objects. There's blank, stroke, monkey. These are essentially pre-made grease pencil objects, so we can ignore both of these, but blank is what we're going to use when we actually start to hand draw, so we'll come back to that momentarily. But then we have scene line art, collection line art, and object line art. So scene line art, it's just going to add line art, which is essentially outlines to everything. It's going to add it to the entire scene. So anything that's in this scene, it's going to affect. Now then you have collection line art. Same kind of thing, but you can constrain it to a single collection. So if you have, for example, a bunch of raindrops, which is alluding to what we'll get into later, if you have a bunch of raindrops that you want to be affected by line art, then you can specify and constrain it to that single collection. And then you have object line art, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's the same kind of thing. It will add outlines to a single object. So that's what we're going to add in first, because we're going to be using that for our handle here. So actually, if we select the handle and then add in that object line art, it will go ahead and assume we're meaning to add it to that handle. So we'll do that, and it will add the line art there. And as you can see, we have this really cool little outline on our umbrella. So actually, before we go anywhere else or do anything else, we need to add another material to the umbrella here, and we're just going to make it this same red. So we can choose that red, and then we will click the new material from that current material. We'll rename this to yellow, and we will change the color to yellow. Just like that. Okay, there we go. So let's get back to the line art here. So let's click the line art, and let's rename it to umbrella. I spelled that very wrong. Umbrella. There we go. I promise I'm literate. Handle, okay? And now we can go to our modifier, and we can actually see what is driving all this. This is just a regular grease pencil object, but it's using the modifier of line art, and it's using the source type as object, and then it's choosing the object, which is our handle there, And then it's, of course, using some of these parameters. So the line thickness, we can just crank up, make it a little bit more stylized, maybe around 60, I think is going to be cool. And that's as easy as it needs to be to add a little bit of grease pencil onto an object. So this works for really anything. If I wanted to change this to the umbrella, now I have line art on the umbrella. If I wanted to change it to the circle, now, whoops, I reselected it. Lucky selection. If I wanted to change it to the circle, there it's on the circle. So obviously I don't want any of those. I just want the umbrella. But now let's add in one more piece of geometry down here. So we have something for the legs to center on. I just realized we forgot to do the boots. So let's take care of that real quick. We'll do it really fast. We'll add in a mesh plane. We'll rotate that 90 degrees in the X. And then we're just going to scale it down and kind of just set it essentially where we want the boots. So I think the boots should be about right here. We can add in a edge loop there. We'll grab both of these edge loops, hit E to extrude, scale them in the X, and now we need to add a subdivision surface modifier. As I said, completely forgot to do this, so we're just kind of going on the fly here, and we're just going to add in a little bit more geometry just to kind of shore this up and make it feel like rain boots. And you know what? I think that's going to be good enough. Maybe I'll just shrink it a little bit. Something like that is going to be good. And I will link the material with Command L. Okay, so now we have boots. Sorry for the distraction. Sorry to go non-linearly. Apologies, but I just kind of forgot. So now we're going to add in another grease pencil object and just kind of continue with the stylization of grease pencil. So we'll hit Shift A, we'll go down to grease pencil, and we'll add in a blank. Now, once you add in a blank grease pencil, nothing really happens. It doesn't affect anything. There's no good place to change anything. That's because we have to draw it. So once you have a grease pencil object selected, and we'll just go ahead and rename this to umbrella, I cannot spell, underscore details. So once we have this selected, we can go over to object mode, we can drop down, and we can actually go into draw mode. That's a new mode that's unlocked once you have a grease pencil object selected. So once we select that, you'll see we have a myriad of brushes down here. We have some UI up here. Some of it is new and foreign. Some of it looks maybe familiar if you've done any sculpting or weight painting. But it's all really, really helpful, and it's actually not as complicated or intimidating as it might look at first. So let's dive into kind of the utility of it a little bit, and I'll explain what I'm doing as I'm doing it. We're not going to get all the way in the weeds here. We're just going to use the only tools that we really need to use to achieve the look that we're trying to look for. So the first thing I'm going to do is select the pen. I don't really care for the pencil. I don't like the way it looks, and obviously we want to kind of match the style of our umbrella handle here, and that's going to be achieved with the pen. So I'm going to zoom in here a little bit, and if I started to draw, we can't see it. But if I draw over here, we can. And that's because it's trying to draw the grease pencil on the other side, because currently it's aligned to the origin. So I'm going to double click Command Z just to undo that. And I'm going to change from origin to surface like this. And now it will draw along the surface, and it goes pretty seamlessly, honestly. Now, something really cool to just take note of, as I draw out a stroke, this stroke is actually technically geometry. I can hit Tab and I can hit A, and you see we have all of these little points, exactly like the blob brush in Illustrator. It uses little points and interpolates along the way, and that's really cool, but that also means we can grab any one of these points and move it. We can grab it with the soft selection tool by hitting O, and we can also change from edit mode into sculpt mode, and then we have grease pencil specific sculpting brushes. So I can hit the grab brush here, and I can just kind of drag it out and reorient exactly what I want, which is really cool if you make a mistake and you maybe just want to smooth something out or fix something. But it's also really great for like hand-drawn animation or frame-by-frame animation, where you just want to scooch something to the side a little bit. So that's, something to consider here. You have some really great tools, and it's really helpful if you think of the strokes not so much like a pencil stroke or a brush stroke in Photoshop, but more like a blob brush stroke in Illustrator. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and tab back into edit mode, grab all of these points, and hit X to delete these. When we added this in, the moment we started drawing, it added in a little keyframe right here. So I'll just make sure that I'm back in draw mode here, and I'll draw another stroke. And if I go forward, nothing changes. And if I go backwards, it goes away. That's because this is essentially like frame by frame animation. So I have to be really careful and cognizant of that. So I need to make sure that I grab my keyframe here, and I just want to make sure that it's set to 0 so that whenever I'm drawing on this, there's not going to be any time on the playhead where my geometry or my grease pencil is missing. I always want to call it geometry nodes. It's the G for me, I think. So I'm going to hit tab once again, grab all these and delete them. And we're actually going to get serious here and draw out our little pieces. So I'm going to grab my pencil. If you don't have a drawing tablet, do your absolute best. But, you know, Godspeed. So as I start to draw this out, you'll notice it's a little bit jittery and it doesn't really match the stroke width, and it's also not a really beautiful stroke. It's a little bit jittery and a little bit bad. So what I need to do first, I guess, for matching the stroke width is I'm going to hit F and change the stroke width just like I would with the sculpting mode or the weight painting mode, just to match it, and I can draw to make sure, and not quite. So I'm going to drop it a couple of notches. You can also use the bracket keys just like you can in like Illustrator or Photoshop, and I think that's probably pretty close. And now then I'll start to draw again. And once again, it's not a great stroke. It doesn't really match the smoothness of our umbrella handle here. So what I need to do is go up to the stroke panel down here and go down and toggle on stabilize stroke. And now this works just like it would in Photoshop or Lazy Mouse and ZBrush. I think in Photoshop it's called like smooth. It just kind of adds drag to your brush and a little bit of delayed offset so that you can make a smoother move. But if I want to have a really smooth move like this, and then I want to do something smaller, it kind of breaks and it's not great. So having stabilized stroke on doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. Instead, what we can do is we can just keep it as is. So drawing like this, and it's kind of jittery, but you know, it helps us for like small agile movements. But then we can hold down Shift and it toggles on our stabilized stroke momentarily. So I'm going to undo that. I'm going to go to the stroke. I'm actually going to increase this to like 60. And I'm going to go through here and I'm just going to add the detail lines holding down Shift, and you can watch me in 5 times speed, however long it takes. Okay, so I think something like that is kind of cool. Pretty decent strokes. Honestly, that might be the best one I've done. I've recorded this a few times and I've practiced a few times, and this is the best one I've done so far. Okay, but I also want to add a couple more little moments here where we have kind of little like shiny pieces where it almost makes the umbrella look like it's wet, or maybe it's like kind of a shiny plastic. And it's the temptation of many artists, and it's not the wrong way to go about it. I just recommend different. If you hit in and open up the side panel here, you have the option to change the color, and all of this gets a little bit confusing. It gets a little bit weird if you're not careful, and I just prefer to not even mess with the tool settings. I like to just go down to the material property panel right here and address the materials in here. So we have the stroke, and we can actually toggle that on and off. We can use the color input to change the color of the stroke if we want. We can also turn on fill, and we can crank up the alpha, and then we could change the fill of our stroke. Of course, the strokes are not closed, but I can just quickly show you. That's what it looks like. And we can do all that, but we can also come up here and we can toggle it on and off, and we can add in more material. So I'm going to add in another material. I'll click new, and I'm just going to call this white. And we're going to change it to a white color. So I'll push that up to white. And now I can come in here and just maybe make some little shine marks. Okay, I think that looks really cool. So now we have our kind of shiny detailed umbrella. And now we need to do the exact same for the boots. So I'm going to go out of draw mode into object mode because I'm going to want the white material again, and I don't want to have to recreate it every time. So I'm just going to take the umbrella details. I'll hit Shift D to duplicate that, and then I'll right click to just set it down. And I'm going to name this boot underscore detail. And I'm not going to need the black, so I can delete that. And then I will tab into edit mode, grab everything. As you can see, everything just turned white, and delete them. And that way there's no current drawing on this grease pencil object. So now I'm going to zoom into my boots here, and I'm going to go into draw mode, and I'm going to just draw the same kind of thing. I'm going to just add little shiny bits. So we're going to do the same kind of thing here, but now we're going to actually start to add the arms and the legs. So I'm going to start with the legs because they're a little bit easier, and then we'll move to the arms. The arms are always just a little bit weird and annoying because you have hands, and hands are just kind of awkward. But again, this is just a, it's a demonstrative graphic 2D hand-drawn illustration. So it doesn't have to be perfect. We're not going to get afraid of hands. And honestly, I'm telling you that more for my sake than for your sake. I'm just trying to hype myself up and get myself through this. I hate drawing hands. I hate modeling hands. I hate doing anything with hands. I hate hands. Hands are terrible. I don't understand them. I think they're freaky. I don't like them, and I don't like them. I don't like drawing them. So there's my little crash out for you. And now we're going to move on to drawing legs. So I'm going to go into object mode. I'll grab the umbrella details. I'll hit Shift D, duplicate that. We'll rename these to legs. And I'm going to remove the white. And then I'll tab into edit mode, grab everything, and delete it. And you know what? While I have it like this, so I don't have to do all that again, I'm going to hit Shift D and duplicate that twice. Okay, and I'm going to name this one to arms and this one to face. That way I have those ready when I want to draw the arms and to draw the face. That way I don't have to keep going back and forth and duplicating and deleting and all that nonsense. So I'm going to make sure my legs are selected, and then I'm going to go into draw mode right here, and we're just going to draw the legs. We're just going to do it really nice and simple. I'm not going to do anything crazy. I'm just going to draw a single line right here. So now I'm going to move on to the arms. So we're just going to start with this first one. I'm going to start with kind of the arm curve like this. I think that's probably going to work. I think that's smooth enough. Probably not. Yeah, that'll do it. If you're having trouble, an old trick from art school, as my semester and a half as a graphic design major, draw from the shoulder. Don't draw from the elbow. That might be super. If you're watching this, you're probably an artist, so that's probably super common knowledge. But I think about that a lot when I'm drawing and I'm having trouble getting a nice clean stroke. So hey, that's pretty good. That looks nice. Okay, so we're gonna go with that, and now we're gonna do the exact same thing. And now we're just gonna draw out the knuckles for holding it, and then we're gonna draw out the rest of the arm. That looks kind of weird. I can get away with that. I can get away with that. That's what we're going for. We're going for getting away with it. Okay, now we're going to draw the second arm over here. I'm just going to start by kind of drawing out. That was a mistake. Okay. I'm going to draw it 4 or 5 different times. That'll work. And then I'll draw the thumb. Then I'll draw the fingers. And then I'll hold Shift, go back up. And you know what? Again, I can get away with that. So now we will go back into object mode, and we'll go into the face, and then go into draw mode, and we'll draw in the face. Now I'm going to do something a little special for the face here. I'm going to draw out an eyeball. I'm going to make sure I get it right. There we go. And then I'm going to tab into edit mode and grab all of these. I'll hit Shift D, and I will move these out to about right here. And now I have 2 identical eyeballs. They're not wonky where one's a little bit bigger. So now I'll tab back at edit mode, and I will just draw the little mouth here. And I think we're good. I think that's it. I think we grease penciled this guy to death. All right, now we're going to get into, I think what everybody's here for is actually the animation part of this grease pencil. We modeled out our little guy with his little simple geometry. We added some goofy legs and arms, and we've made him nice and kind of detailed. To some degree, I guess you can't really make something that's supposed to be minimalistic detailed, but whatever. Now we're going to we're going to animate a little bit, and we're going to start by making the eyes blink. It's going to be a very low fidelity, very easy approach to animation with grease pencil. So like I said, we're not going to get super deep into the weeds. We're not going to do any like VFX animation, but we're going to start with something pretty simple and then slowly kind of work our way into something maybe slightly more complicated. So let's make sure we have our face selected here, and we're going to go into draw mode. Now, as I showed you previously, we have the keyframe here at 0, and if I go behind it, everything disappears, and if I go forward, it stays there, and it will let me draw on it wherever. I could scroll forward, I could draw all over the place, I could give him a little, spade tattoo, whatever. I can do anything. I can draw all over him, and it's not going to add a keyframe here. However, if I turn auto keying on right here, this little red button, and I try to draw something, now it disappears. And if I go back one frame, it's the face again. But if I go forward one frame, now it's this circle. If I go forward another frame and I draw something else, that disappears too. And so this is how essentially you animate. With having auto keyframe turned on, it allows you to insert a new keyframe. So in essence, what it's doing is it's assuming every time you start to draw something with auto keying turned on, you're cleaning the slate and starting over. So that's really cool for doing frame by frame animation. It's really cool to, in a fast workflow, to quickly, add your own little animations in there. But it's not ideal when you have a scenario like this, where you have a mouth that you want to keep consistent and the eye placement to be relatively consistent as well. So instead, what we're going to need to do is actually come in here and change a single parameter that will allow us to keep everything the same, no matter if we draw on it, and instead it will just add it on top of it. It's going to be this snowflake up here at the top. You might have to scroll over to the side to find it, but it's going to be additive drawing. So now if I draw something, it will add a keyframe down here because my auto keying is still on. And if I go back one, that little line will be gone. And if I go forward and draw, it will stay because it's adding it on top as an additive keyframe rather than as a replacement keyframe. So again, I'm going to delete all of these. So for us, that means I'm going to start at frame 6 and I'm going to remove this eyeball and draw a kind of blink there, and then I'm going to replace the eyeball. So I can hit T to open up my side panel here, and I have access to the eraser. Now the eraser is fantastic in Grease Pencil. I think it works really, really nicely, but we can just get rid of those. And I can go back to my little pen, and I can just try to draw right here where I think the blanks should be. And if I go back one frame, they're not really where they should be. I guess they're in relative proximity and it's not the end of the world, but it kind of looks like he's almost like blinking forward. So I need to find some kind of a way to still anchor my previous drawing forward so I can still see essentially where the eyeballs were. So again, I'm going to delete this keyframe right here, and I'm going to go up to my overlay right here, and I'm going to drop down the Grease Pencil, which is right next door. And I'm going to turn on onion skin. So if you've ever used a frame-by-frame software before, if you've ever done any kind of cell animation, onion skinning might be familiar to you. And for those of you who are strictly 3D, don't know what onion skin is, it's essentially a little overlay that's going to show you the frame before and the frame after. So in the case of Blender, the frame before is going to be, I think, green, and the frame after is going to be purple. And this will help you make decisions based on, the frame after and the frame before, so that you can place your object, your blank, your ball, whatever you're doing, in proximity to where it should be in the next succession of frames. So I can show you this in practice if that's kind of confusing to you. I'll go ahead and grab my eraser, and I'll erase the eyeballs, and as you can see, the eyes are now visible right here. They're still visible, they're green, but if you look over in our render here, they're not visible. So the green is just a nice overlay that tells us, hey, this is the previous drawing. This is what it looked like the frame before where you are right now. So I'm going to grab my pen, and I'm just going to draw in little eye blinks. You know what? I might actually do something kind of a little bit cuter like this. I'll keep it real cute, something like that. Okay, and then I can go forward one frame. I can grab this frame down here. I can hit Shift D and then move it all the way back here. And so now we have a nice little blink. If I play it back, it's a little blink, and that's fantastic. And just to kind of model onion skinning a little bit more, if I go to this keyframe at frame 6, we can see instead of being green, it's now purple. So it's just showing you the frame that comes next. That way you can kind of make decisions in relative to the frame right before and right after. So now that we have our little blinks here, we can highlight that, and I'm going to hit Shift D and just duplicate this out. I'm going to put a blink there. And I don't know how long our animation is going to be, but I can kind of just time this out with essentially where I kind of want the blinks. And I think that's good. I think somewhere along that line, maybe about a second and some change in between them is probably okay. So now we're going to move on to the rain that's actually going to rain down on him. So I'm going to put my pen in the little pen holster here for a second, because we're going to start working with geometry for just a moment. So I'm going to exit out of draw mode and go into object mode. And now I'm going to add in another collection. I'm going to call the collection rain, just like this, okay? So we're going to add in another piece of geometry. We'll add in a mesh, and let's just make sure it's in the rain section, and we'll just call this a rain drop dot one. Okay. So same kind of thing we did previously. We can hit tab to enter into edit mode, and then M to merge at center. And now we're just going to move this up a little bit, and we're going to tab into edit mode again and just extrude this out so we have kind of a line here. So essentially what we're going to do is create 3 raindrops that just kind of batter down on the umbrella multiple times, and we can create a little animation set that we can play over and over again. That way we don't have to animate a whole bunch of raindrops. It's just pretty simple. So we'll start with this one right here. I'm going to grab my camera and just hide it so it doesn't get in my way. And I'm going to start by rotating it something like, I don't know, yeah, negative 25 degrees. So I'm going to set it essentially where it's going to hit, and then I'm going to hit G and double click Z to move it in its local origin, and I'm going to push it up here. And again, we'll start at frame 6 just because that's about half of a second. And I'm going to hit K and add in a location value. So now I can scroll forward to frame 7, and I'll just pull this down to right here. I'll go forward to frame 8, pull it down to about here, and then I'll keep it there until frame 10. And then I'll push it right back up to where it was. In fact, I can copy and paste this front frame, so we can see it hits and then pops back up. So now we want to essentially control it with a shape key so that when it hits the umbrella, it almost looks like it dissolves. So it kind of has some drag or almost smear on it. But even as we do this, we can't really see what's going on. It's just kind of an outline here. The outline is the best we can do. So we're going to add in another grease pencil type, and this time we're going to use a collection grease pencil. So we're going to go to grease pencil, go down to collection line art like that. And under the modifiers property, we can change the collection from grease pencil to rain. And now we can see we have our little raindrop here. So I'm going to change this to 60 so that it matches the rest of our little outlines here. And now we can kind of watch it as it plays back. So now we're going to use a shape key to actually drive the animation of the raindrop hitting. So I'm going to go up to my viewport up here, and I'm going to toggle off grease pencil. Now this is going to get really annoying to toggle this on and off. So go ahead and right click that and add this to your quick favorites if you want. Now you can hit Q and you can remove grease pencil from this viewport. So I'm going to grab this piece right here, and I'm going to scroll forward to where it first hits, which is right here. And I'm going to add in a shape key here, and this will be our base. Then I'll add in another shape key. And from this shape key, I can just kind of crank it to 1. That way we can see it. And I'll just take this top vertex and I can double click G and I can drag it all the way down here. So it's just a really small and almost like the last little bit of the raindrop hitting. So now I can actually keyframe this value to make it feel like it's hitting against the umbrella. So at frame 7, it's going to be full tilt. Frame 8, I think it can maybe... I'm going to add that keyframe in right there. At frame 8, maybe we drop it a little bit by just increasing that value. Frame 9, I think it should be all the way, and then frame 10, it's gone. So let's go ahead and make sure our camera, in the last video that I did, I couldn't pronounce the French word and I chickened out in the last minute, but I do believe somebody told me in the comments it's pronounced passepartout, I think. If it's not, I don't care. I don't care at all. So we're going to crank this up to 1. We select our camera, go to viewport visibility, and we're just going to, or viewport display rather, and we're just going to crank that to 1. That way we don't get distracted by anything outside the boundaries of our camera. Okay. So now we can watch how this hits, and that feels raindroppy to me. That feels really good. Okay, so I'm going to take this and I'm actually going to duplicate it. So I'll hit Shift D, then I'm going to go forward to essentially where this keyframe is right here. And I'm going to just kind of change the keyframe to essentially where I want it, which is going to be over here. Now, it's not going to show up in our grease pencil immediately, so you can toggle that off and then back on, then it'll show up again. And now it's going to have a little bit of a hissy fit because we have keyframes previously, and so it's going to snap back over to where this one is, which is not ideal. So what we'll do is go backwards. See that? There it is there. So we'll delete single keyframe, delete single keyframe. We'll go back one. Same thing. Let's delete all the single keyframes here. There's definitely a faster way to do this, but whatever. So this is where it touches down. And then it can stay right here. And then right here is where I'm going to pull it back to about right here. Now I'll do the exact same thing. I should have just, you know what? It doesn't matter, but I should have done something different, and that's okay. So I'm going to set that there. I'll turn off grease pencil, turn it back on so I can see what's going on. And I will just delete these single keyframes because obviously I'm a fool and didn't do what I was supposed to do. And that's okay. There we go. So here, it's going to pull back up to like right here. And then can pull up to here. And this one can pull up to here. Okay. So now we have rain. Why is that not going forward? Okay. So you're seeing me figure this out in real time. It's animation. It's not supposed to be simple. So, okay, we have 3 raindrops here that all hit at the same time, which is not what we want. So let's go ahead and we'll just select these 2 right here, and we'll just take these and we'll drag them out to here. And we want to just kind of offset these so they hit in nice random patterns. So I'm going to take this, grab all of his keyframes, hit Shift D, and duplicate those out so that it just kind of rains on him at random. And you know what? I think, yeah, we'll do 60 frames. I think 60 frames is probably fine. Okay, that's good. Now we'll take our next one and we will drag it to like here. So maybe it starts on that frame. Yeah, that's our first one. We'll hit Shift D. Kind of want a little bit of overlap, but that's okay. We'll fill in the gaps with the other one. Okay, that looks good. And now I'll take this one and we'll start kind of backfilling these gaps here. So there's that, and then all right, so there we go. We have our little raindrops figured out, but now we want to go in and do a little bit of hand drawn animation, a little bit of frame by frame animation, and make these like little splashes when it hits. So we're going to start with this guy all the way over here, this far one, and we'll select him, and we'll just start right here where he touches down. So this is where this animation is going to kick off. So I'm going to hit Shift A, and we're going to add in a, no we're not. You know what we're going to do? We're going to use one of these other ones so that we have a consistent stroke width. Let's use legs, and I'm going to hit Shift D to duplicate that. Where is it? Oh, I don't. It's not toggle on. Let me turn on grease pencil real quick. Okay, there we go. And I'm going to hit Shift D to duplicate that. I'll rename it to Raindrop 1, and I'm going to tab into edit mode, grab all this, delete it, and then I'm going to go into draw mode, and we're going to start here. So this is where it hits. And so I'm going to add in kind of just these lines where it should kind of like pop out. You'll have a lot heavier lines that impact because it's like it has all the momentum right there. We'll go forward one, and then let's make sure that additive keyframing is turned off so we can make sure the snowflake is off. So now when we add in another keyframe, we can see right here, we can see where our previous drawing was. So we can just kind of go in here and just kind of draw out little pieces. This is where it should end right here. So if I just leave it, it will stay here in perpetuity. So what I kind of need to do, I'm sure there's a better way to go about this. I don't know what it is, but when I'm done with a animation and I want it to stop, I just click a little dot over to the side off canvas so that you can't really see it, and it just kind of resets the animation there. So now if we play that back, it's a nice little hit. So let's go ahead and take all of these and let's find the next spot that this same perpetrator hits that area, which will be about right here. So I can hit Shift D and I can duplicate this and find that first frame, and it should pop down. There we go. There's another one. Hits right there. Shift D. Go over to that. There should be one more maybe. Yep, right here. Shift D, pull to that, and that should be good for that, so we can play it back. So now let's do the exact same thing. We'll just take the raindrop here. We'll go back into object mode. I'll hit Shift D to duplicate it. I'll grab all my keyframes. I'll delete them. I'll make sure that I'm in draw mode, and now I'm going to go back to, let's just start with whatever this first one is right there, okay? So the last thing we want to do here, just because there's a little bit of stagnation to the actual movement here, let's just add a single little tiny bit of movement to our umbrella here. So I'm going to grab this umbrella, and some of these bigger ones, like right here, I'm going to add in a rotation keyframe, just like this, and I'll go forward one frame where that kind of hits, and then I'm just going to barely rotate it backwards. So as you can see, it moves the umbrella backwards a little bit. which is nice. It gives a little bit of movement, but it looks a little bit off-putting because the details don't move with it. So what I need to do, turn back on my grease pencil, I'm going to grab the umbrella objects, or the umbrella details rather, and I'm going to parent them to the umbrella itself. So you can select the details and then shift select the umbrella and hit Command P, and now it will move with the umbrella. You can parent grease pencil objects to other pieces of geometry and other objects, which lies part of the coolest part of grease pencil, which is just it interacts in a 3D space. It interacts like any other object in Blender, which I think is super cool. And that is the full pipeline integrating 2D animation in a 3D space. The beauty is in how simple it is to make something that would otherwise be pretty time intensive in a different software. We took a few pieces of boring geometry and turned them into this charming little vignette. Now, grease pencil is far more complicated and robust and deep than our dumb little exploration today. So if you'd like to see a more in-depth tutorial on proper hand-drawn animation inside Blender, let me know in the comments. Be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and bully me in the comments section for being lazy. You can find me on Instagram at sweetboy.motion. I post all kinds of little updates and fun stuff over there. Thank you to our sponsor Skillshare, and thank you so much for watching.